Happy Mother's Day to all the firstborn immigrant daughters. Not gonna have to explain that. If you get it, you get it.
Being an eldest daughter of an immigrant family is a tough one. Okay, you see the tweets, the articles, the endless TikToks.
So we've all seen the hilarious memes about the oldest daughter and how anxious she is.
Oldest child to eldest child, are we doing okay?
And they're all pretty much saying the same thing. I mean, I haven't read all of them or seen all of them, but I'm assuming that they're all saying the same thing, and that is that we are... God built us very, very strong. So in today's video, I wanted to share my thoughts and reflections on what it's been like firsthand, because yes, welcome. And some of the things that I'm going to mention may not be specific to just being an immigrant or a daughter, but there are some nuances that I'll touch on occasionally. And of course, life is different for different people, so this may or may not have been your experience. If it wasn't, you need to calm down, because some of you guys get real rowdy about like, that's not what I think. Cool. It's not your video, but this is my channel. So if you haven't noticed, I am talking about myself. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. As a preface, I'd like to say that basically being an eldest daughter of an immigrant family means you were elected leader without running a campaign. Imagine Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Georgie Porgy, the second, third, fourth, didn't have to run for election, okay? All this buckwass was not necessary. Imagine they just came out the womb and they were told, hey, thanks for being born. Now you're president. We elect you to run this great nation of this liberty of freedoms. Go do it. Actually, that might have been a good thing, because maybe we could have avoided all of this stuff that happened. Less democracy, more monarchy, I guess. But, you know, yeah, that's what it feels like being born first. It kind of is a long weight on your shoulders, you know what I mean? Especially if you're in an immigrant household. One of the hardest things is responsibility. As an eldest child, in general, you're tasked with being the mid-level manager equivalent of a parent. And the CEO, aka the parent, gets to make the rules, gets to delegate and yell about how people aren't working hard enough these days. You know? And while if they screw up the whole company and get a nice severance package, you know what mid-level manager gets? They get to drive their younger siblings everywhere.
Get in, loser. We're going shopping.
Schools, friends, shopping, parent-teacher conferences. I have been asked to do parent-teacher conferences, okay? My siblings don't call me their second mom. They call me their second dad. Excuse me? What? Oh, no. Oh, no, no, no. But you know what? I feel bad saying, like, the CEOs ran everything into the ground. I'm not talking about my parents like that. But I just feel like growing up, I felt like this kind of stuff was expected, okay? More from immigrant families. Like maybe in other families, yeah, you used to drop your siblings. No, in immigrant families, it's very normal for siblings to take care of other siblings way more. And if I'm being honest, I saw this role way more with immigrant daughters. Okay, when I was growing up in the community that I did, boys tended to have more freedom growing up, less responsible for the family unit until they get to a certain age. But the people who were driving the minivans with all their like 6 siblings in the back, yeah, it was usually the eldest daughters. Okay, immigrant daughters are asked to mature faster than not only their sons, but more than you'd see other girls in society in the US. Now, of course, these are my opinions. I'm not saying that this is all backed by science or facts, but, you know, some have it worse. Some experience this parentification on another level. And for those of you who don't know what parentification is, let me explain. It's basically when the child may take on responsibilities and tasks that are typically associated with an adult, such as providing emotional support, financial assistance, or even physical care. And the negative consequences of this on the kid is that they have a loss of their childhood, they have an increased risk of stress, anxiety, and depression, and difficulties, you know, forming healthy relationships later in life because they had to be an adult so young. So if you're an eldest child in an immigrant household, you may have also been a translator, for example. Like in some families, the immigrant kids are the income earners as well. So I'm just gonna stop right there and say, like, I didn't have it that bad in terms of responsibility. So I acknowledge my privilege where I have it, and that was not something, I wasn't parentified on that level. So this, I would say, is more instrumental parentification, which refers to when a child takes on like functional responsibilities in a household, you know, like paying bills or taking care of siblings, shopping, whatever. But one of the hardest roles you play in terms of responsibility is being a therapist for everybody, okay? As the eldest daughter of an immigrant family, this was me, okay? You're an emotional support for your parents, first of all, and then also for your siblings. And that can be a form of emotional parentification. So I wanted to elaborate a little bit on the effects of adultification because it can have negative effects on children, on their education, education, their mental health, and just their overall well-being. It's because if they're constantly treated like they're older and they're more mature, you know, they're set to this higher standard. They have to act at this certain level. They're not allowed to be children and enjoy the pleasures of childhood, which can lead to feelings of inadequacy and low self-worth as they get older. There's also a physical aspect of it that, I mean, I didn't really deal with. You know, there is an impact that can have on children's bodies if they're not at that level developmentally to handle those, that physical strain or whatever it may be. The most important things about this whole thing is to raise awareness and educate parental figures, authority figures, teachers, let them know about their potential biases and impacts that their expectations can have on these particular children. And so whether that's training or cultural competency or just like hiring teachers who come from different backgrounds so that there's more diversity in education, and then also supporting policies that support children's development and well-being, and also their having good education, which is something that I think the US struggles with. But yeah, and that's how future communities will thrive. Extra points if you were your parents' struggle baby. If you don't know what struggle baby means, like basically you were along for the ride when they were struggling. If you were the eldest child of an immigrant family, you were probably experiencing that more than your younger siblings. And I do think being a daughter in particular does add some nuance, because women in certain cultures are the ones who take on these like emotional burdens of family and can be the punching bags. At least the culture where I come from, I don't feel like men are typically expected to take on the level of the emotional support that women are. There's more of an emphasis on being a provider or doing these more like rigid gender role type things, right? So yeah, like when I look at my siblings, I was the eldest of 3. And so I was the one who came with my parents to America as technically an immigrant. And I saw them work their way up. And I think that, by the time you get to my youngest sibling, life was a lot different by the time we got there, right? So what she saw was a lot different. Not to say that she hasn't experienced her own difficulties or levels of trauma or whatever, but yeah, it's different when you're the eldest. And I think that there's a downside to seeing all that struggle. It's a trauma in itself. I can see that in my life now when it comes to like money or like being afraid of things. I also feel like I'm very sensitive when it comes to my parents. Like I'm very, very, very like defensive. Like anytime I would feel even a shift from somebody in public being rude to my mom and dad, like I wanted to just lose it, right? Because you see them go through this and you know what their struggle is. But I feel like the eldest daughter of an immigrant family is generally like super protective of their parents. But you also feel this sense of like really owing something to your parents because you saw the struggle and the sacrifice that they went through as an immigrant, which I'll get to later on in another point in this video. But I feel like when you feel that way, it's hard to do things that you want to do or make decisions for your life that you want for yourself if it doesn't align with their vision, because you really feel like you're disappointing them on another level, like not in a regular way that you would be disappointing your parents, because that hurts anyway, right? But like I do feel like the experience of being the eldest daughter of an immigrant family, it's on another level. Which gets me to my next point, is that you got this big box gift that you received of the Great Expectations. And I felt this so heavily. It wasn't always a spoken thing. Many times it was unspoken. There's this pressure to uphold family honor and prestige. I made another video which was terrible. Don't go watch it. It was pretty bad, okay? It was about honor culture. And I come from a culture that there is a very, very heavy presence of honor culture. And if you don't know what honor culture is, you can go watch that video. But it's basically this idea that like the family honor rests upon your shoulders, okay? And that is the highest thing that matters. Another point about honor culture. The difficulty with honor culture in particular being a girl is that I think there's a very heavy burden on a woman when it comes to honor culture. So for me, for example, like anything that I did that was out of line, I felt this big thing that like I was dishonoring my family. I was hurting my siblings' reputation. And honestly, some of the things are like really stupid when I think about it in hindsight. And I'm like, I was just young and like whatever, exploring the world in my life. And you see also like parents who make it as immigrants, you're just like, what's your excuse? You know what I mean? So you have this pressure to succeed and achieve more than your parents did, which if they achieved a lot, it's like a big bar. It's a really big bar. And so it can be very overwhelming and lead to stress and anxiety. I'll be honest with you, I have that. Like I definitely feel like I cannot disappoint my parents. They did all this for me. Like I cannot be average, It kind of creates like this constant void and this feeling of like I will never be good enough, It's not good. Now, one thing that's been super confusing, I'm not gonna lie, as an eldest daughter of an immigrant family, we need to just do it. acronym for that because that's getting really long. So you're pressured to succeed, be the best, be the one, okay? And then you get to a certain age as a girl and people are like, marriage, babies, do it. And they just expect you to flip a switch and they're like, career, not important. So what was the point of all this? What was the point of all this anxiety and pressure? I don't really understand. It's very confusing, and honestly, it leaves you feeling very empty when you get to that point because you're like, I did what for what? Like, I don't really understand. I could cry about it. I mean, the reason that you have this huge pressure to succeed is because you're the blueprint, okay? You are the one who's leading your younger siblings. And your parents didn't leave your homeland for what? They didn't leave you so that you can just be Joe Schmo. No, they didn't do that. But yeah, it's very confusing. I am very confused. The other thing that I've noticed from eldest daughters of immigrant families that really bothers me is this idea that you have to burn yourself to keep others warm. Like, basically set yourself on fire, girl. Okay, you need to sacrifice to keep others happy. And that goes back into like the honor culture, the gender role stuff. Like, for example, I wanted to live in a big city. I wanted to do the thing. I wanted to live in New York. That was a dream of mine. But I was so worried about how mad my parents would get and how dishonorable of a thing it was in the culture that I came from, right? To like leave before you're married and like whatever. And I regret that. I really do regret that. And if I was a son, I mean, I'm sure they'd still be mad, but I think the consequences are way less if you are a guy. But there's also that aspect that I mentioned before. You know, it's really also about how that affects your siblings. I used to think like, okay, if I make some ruckus and upset my parents, then how's that going to affect my siblings' chances of getting to do what they want to do or their mental health, right? It's a difficult thing to navigate. Yeah, honestly, honor culture is kind of a burden. Next, I want to talk about what was honestly the most difficult thing for me as the eldest daughter of an immigrant family. And that was that I had to figure everything out on my own and alone. I talk about this even now to my parents and like people, my friends. I'm like, I look back at my life and I just wish I had some sort of mentorship. I didn't come from a big family. And so I feel like a lot of the things in my life, I just had to navigate on my own. I didn't have a big sister figure. I didn't have any of that, cousins, nothing that I could talk to about my problems or like go to for guidance. And so a lot of the things that I went through, I just kind of suffered in silence and just dealt with it. I had my friends and stuff, but you know, sometimes you want someone who can kind of guide you and lead you and help you along the way. And I didn't really have that because it is a tricky thing to navigate growing up in two cultures and being a religious minority and like just all of it, because there's so much conflicting stuff that goes along with that. And when I say I couldn't share with anyone, what I mean by that is that because of this like idea of honor culture, right? I couldn't talk to other people about the things that I was going through because there's this lack of trust that's always there. I never trusted anybody to talk about my problems, you know, and that goes back to the honor culture. I never wanted to make my family look bad for my mistakes or things that I was, you know, learning or doing. And that was really tough. That was really tough to not even be able to talk to anybody about what I was going through, whether it was like something small, like maybe that I was going through in high school or even like a lot bigger as I got older. But yeah, that breeds like this deep feeling of loneliness. And I did feel that. And I think that ultimately I don't feel that as much now. It's still there, but I think me having a YouTube channel and being able to like, this is like a therapy for me without sharing too much about my life, right? But yeah, it's very isolating and lonely. Out of all of it, that I would say was the hardest part, was just going through it alone and not having anybody to talk to, not having anybody who could help me, nobody who could relate besides my friends, like someone who was older. And I see that in my sister, for example, like she has me. And I look at her sometimes and I'm like, wow, how nice it would have been if I just had me. Like, you know, if I just had an older version of me. And I can see the difference that it made in my sister's life, just having me as a mentor. And I'm not trying to take credit for anything that she's done, but I do see that the mistakes that I made, the things that nobody guided me or pushed me to do, I made her do it, and I see the positive aspects of that. And so, but yeah, anyway, I just wanted to share my thoughts on that. And yeah, those are my thoughts. Being the eldest daughter of an immigrant family was hard. I was navigating two very different cultures and many times opposing cultural norms. But on top of that, just being the eldest daughter in general and all the things that come along with that. But yeah, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, what you guys think in the comments below. And I hope that you enjoyed the video. I hope that it was helpful for some of you out there who are like, oh, I go through alone. You're not alone, and it is tough. And so I'm validating that for you. But yeah, I'd love to know your guys' thoughts, comments down below. And are you an eldest child? Are you the eldest daughter of an immigrant family? Tell me all about it. Tell us all about it. Give us some tips and tricks on how you handle that, okay? All right. Well, that's all I have for now. Thank you guys for watching. TazzyPhe out. Bye. Boom.